So I am back with Ginny Moore, who just read a sample of Ruin Me by Midnight, her latest release. And as somebody who was once attacked by a black swan, I really felt that scene. I felt the drama and the stakes of, defend me from Kevin. But like I said, it was so sweet, also so funny. I'm curious, how does your mind work? Did you go into that scene knowing that it was going to be a first kiss, or at least a kiss, and then be interrupted by a goose that was going to be hilarious? Or did you kind of find that as you were writing?
I always like to think when I'm writing and when I'm kind of coming up with what's going to happen next with the characters, I like to think about what is the emotional range of the scene. And I knew that this needed to be the moment that they were ready to start opening up to each other and starting to reveal their pasts. And they both do have these really scarred pasts that they've never really shared with anyone. They've never trusted that. And this was the first time they started to kind of break down those walls and you started to see them sharing with each other. So we had that moment of really significant emotional depth. So I needed to balance that. I knew I needed to have, these sad sack characters have some levity surrounding them to force them to laugh and find joy in life, which is kind of a big moral, a big theme of this book is how can you find love and joy after tragedy? So in this particular scene, when I was originally drafting this and kind of roughing this out with another author friend of mine, we were coming up with different ways in books that people got ruined. And there's always the person in the garden, gets stumbled upon. And then we were trying to come up with how can that go completely wrong? So I immediately thought of similarly having been attacked by a goose in a park when I was 7 years old. I still remember it vividly. I was like, instead of a person stumbling upon them in the garden, what if it's a goose and the goose attacks them? And I have a very good friend who teases me that, why am I never in a romance book? Why am I never a character in any of your books? So I named the goose after him. So, so it is named after a friend of mine, but it was very intentional to kind of have that balance in the scene in terms of the
Yeah,
emotions that they had.
that's so interesting. And so you said at the beginning that you were really interested in doing this kind of reverse ruination trope. And then you also just mentioned that the book has this strong theme of how do you find love after tragedy. And so I'm always curious, for you, does the theme come first? Does the trope come first? Does something else come first?
Really, it's really kind of random, to be honest with you. Sometimes, like for example, my first book, Adding Up to Love, has an autistic heroine, and a lot of her experience was based on mine. Being I am neurodivergent, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was younger, being on the autism spectrum as an adult, and thinking about when I was growing up and how frustrating it was for me to find somebody who understood me. And I've been very fortunate. My partner and I have been together for 20 plus years, and he gets me and understands how my mind works. And so I really wanted to think about that what would that would be like, what that would be like in history, which is how I came up with the setting of a female mathematician at Oxford University. In this particular book, I had the house party idea in my head, and I had this idea of ruination, but twisting the trope a little bit. And my first draft of this is, I think, like my ninth or 10th version of the story. I picked it up and I wrote it and I put it down so many times. And in the original version, she was trying to get caught in a compromising position with a different character, and Callum's character was the one that kept interrupting it, but I couldn't sustain that for a full novel, so I kind of twisted it, and I really liked how it ended up. But sometimes it's a trope, sometimes it's a particular setting in history, and sometimes it's a character that kind of gives me the
Yeah,
idea to start going.
I love that. And so you mentioned in your bio as well that your kind of brand mission is to celebrate neurodiversity through historical romance.
Yeah.
What's your approach to writing neurodiverse characters when the modern audience has labels, but the characters the characters do not?
And I'll fully admit that these first couple of books that I've written, I've taken elements of my own personality or members of my family. Everybody in my family is neurodiverse. We come together. We just act like that, I guess. And thought about their traits and kind of used that as a way to describe the characters. I actually did not, when I wrote my first book, I did not in my first draft initially plan on her being autistic. I kind of planned on her having some quirks, like kind of an exaggerated version of myself. And when early readers read it, they were like, oh, she's autistic, right? And I said, oh, I guess she is. Okay. Ironically, that's actually what led me to start talking to a doctor about maybe my having that diagnosis.
Wow.
So in books previous to this, I've really been thinking about my own experiences and how I could bring those qualities in. For this book, both of the characters particularly experience really significant personal losses. And the male main character, Callum, he is suffering from, which is not something that I can personally relate to. So I did a lot of time reading and researching. I did some interviews with people that struggle with PTSD. I had them read the scenes and the descriptions to make sure I was getting it right. So there's another scene that happens right after this one, actually, that I just read, where they get trapped in a linen closet together. And initially they're trying to get caught by someone else in a compromising position. And the doorknob breaks and they're stuck in there and they can't quite move. And he has a panic attack. And obviously not being able to call it a panic attack, but it's a really significant moment for them that she knows how to talk him through. And she actually relates it to one of the heroines in a previous book, talking her through panic attacks. So a lot of it is using the mental health to also kind of destigmatize it and show that, really allow the reader to sit in, this is what it feels like to have a panic attack. This is what it feels like to walk into a room as a neurodiverse person and experience this. And also some of the challenges that come with finding love when your brain works differently and you don't necessarily have the vocabulary to explain that, because at that time it didn't exist. It wasn't something that was readily available. I'm a stickler for historical accuracy. I love to research. And that is the place where I do bend the truth a little bit, is, getting care for mental health. I really want to normalize that. In my second book, The Countess and the Casanova, the hero is recovering addict and has really severe depression. And I do have him going to talk therapy at the end. And I got some dings from that in reviews, from criticism, saying that was anachronistic. But I did research. Talk therapy was very, very early at that point, but that was a very conscious choice to put that in, because I wanted the readers to see, love does not magically cure mental health challenges. Love can be an inspiration for you to go seek help. That was definitely the case for me, that my husband, my family pushed me to get help, and their love helped me get what I needed and recognize this as a part of myself. So I want to make sure I'm not writing the, love cures all, because that's not reality. We want to have, as much as romance is escapist, I do want to make sure that I'm validating the experiences of people who are neurodiverse and have different experiences with their mental health.